Jiaoyang. So hopefully you're having a good weekend. I know we postponed the test. I know a lot of people are disappointed, but that's okay. I don't want to give you a test on Tuesday when you come back from break. I kind of want to do a review with you. So we're going to do another lesson and then review on Wednesday and take your test on Thursday. Yes, that sounds like a plan. So let's talk about what we're learning today. We're learning our objective today is given a radical equation, students will be able to solve the equation and check for extraneous solutions. Solve the equation and check for extraneous solution. And what's an extraneous solution? Those are solutions that you get after you solve it, but they're not real solutions. When you plug it back in, it doesn't work. Those are called extraneous solutions. Before we start solving, we got to talk about this idea called inverse. Inverse. Every operation has an inverse operation. When you go forward, you go backwards. And if you go forward and backward, you're going to end up with the same thing. Sound good? And why do we need inverse operations? Because inverse operations helps us get x by itself. Let's give you a couple examples. Let's say I have an x plus 3. What's the inverse of plus 3? What's the inverse of plus 3? Well, the inverse is minus 3. So if I actually go minus 3, I would get x by itself, wouldn't I? So that's called an inverse operation. The inverse of plus 3 is minus 3. And that would get x by itself. Very good. And remember, when you do inverse operations, you got to do it to both sides. But since I don't have both sides, I'm just talking about the idea of inverse. Sound good? What if I had 2 times x? What's the inverse of 2 times? Good. It's divide by 2. So take a look. If I multiply by 2 and divide by 2, guess what? I'll get x by itself. And remember, you have to do it to both sides, but we're just talking about the idea right now. Sound good? All right. What if I had x squared? What's the inverse of x squared? Think about it. What would get x by itself? Very good. If I square it and I square root it, I'll get x by itself. The inverse of squared is square root. Good job. What if I had a cube root? Cube root of x. What's the inverse of cube root of x? Think about it. The cube root of x is cubed. Good. Hopefully you're talking along with me. And if I cube root and cube, I'll get x by itself. These are all the operations and the inverse of the operation. The black is the operation. The red is the inverse of it. Sound good? So if we understand the inverse operations, we can actually solve for x. Let's do one a little bit harder. What if I did this? X to the 2/3 power. Think about it. Take your time, pause if you have to. What is the inverse operation? Before you even could talk about inverse, you got to ask, what is this? Right? What is this? What is this? What is this really doing? What does 2/3 power mean? This means the cube root of x squared. That's what it means. So there's actually 2 operations together. So to do inverse operation, you have to do 2 operations. Take a look. What's the inverse of cube root of x? What's the inverse of cube root of x? The inverse of cube root of x is cubed. Sound good? The inverse of cube root of x is cubed. That's one of them. What's the inverse of x squared? The inverse of x squared is square root. So you're doing 2 red things here. You're cubing and square rooting. Can you write that as a fraction in the exponent? What is that as a fraction in the exponent? Isn't that really 3/2? So isn't the inverse operation 3/2? Right? So instead of cube root, I cubed. And instead of cube root here, I cubed. You see that? Instead of squared, I square root. And remember, the bottom determines the radical. That's my operation, 3/2. Take a look. If I take it to the power of 3/2, what do I do with those? When I have exponent to the exponent or power to the power, what do I do with those? I multiply. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 2 is 6. That's 6/6, which is 1. Our answer is x to the 1 power, which is x. Got it? So the inverse operation of a power is kind of like the reciprocal of it, if you notice that. Yeah? So good. So how do you feel so far? That's the idea behind that. That's the idea of solving today. So let's go through and do some problems. Sound good? First problem. this. So the question is, what do you want to get rid of? You have to do the inverse. Everything has a bunch of operations. They tell you everything to do with x. You have to get rid of one at a time. First of all, you look at that. Try to do the easiest first. Yeah, try to get the easiest out of the way, clean it up a little bit. I see this 10. This says minus 10. What's the inverse of minus 10? It's plus 10 both sides. Plus 10 both sides. Over here, that goes away, leaving a square root of 2x plus 1 equals 5. Can I get rid of anything inside that radical here? Can I get rid of anything inside there? No, because it's kind of like locked up. It's inside the root. So to really clean it up, you need to get rid of that root first, that square root. So what's the inverse of square root? Good, it's squared. So what you do is you square both sides. Square root and square go away, leaving just the inside, which is 2x plus 1 equals 25. Now solve for this. Inverse of plus 1 is minus 1. That's going to leave a 2x equals 24. The inverse of times 2 is divide by 2. So therefore, x equals 12. Very good. And usually you get the answer. A lot of people on tests, they go, okay, I got an answer. That's good enough. Box it, move on. But look at this. Check for extraneous solutions. Because with this, there's some solutions that don't work. For example, if you got x equals negative 3, plug it in. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, plus 1 is negative 5. You cannot square root a negative. So you know that doesn't work. So check it real fast. 12. 2 times 12 is? Good. 2 times 12 is 24, plus 1 is 25. That's positive, so I know it's going to be okay. Square root of 25 is 5. Minus 10 is negative 5. Perfect. Double check that, please. Next problem. We're just going to do 3 problems today. Keep it a little short. Solve for this. Check for extraneous solutions. Let's go through one at a time. What do you do first? Go with the simplest one. You could divide by 2, but make sure you divide everything, or you subtract 1. To me, subtracting 1 is a lot easier. Subtract 1, subtract 1. I got a negative 2 cube root of x minus 1 equals 8. Now what do I do? Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. I got a cube root of x minus 1 equals negative 4. So how do I get rid of cube root? What's the inverse of cube root? Very good. It is cube. So you cube both sides. I got a x minus 1 cube, and cube root goes away, equals negative 4 to the 3rd power. That means negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4, which is negative 64. Good job. Add 1 on both sides. X equals negative 63. Are you done? No. Check your answer. Check your answer. Plug it in. Negative 63 minus 1 is negative 64. Can you cube root a negative? Yes, you can. You can never square root, fourth root, even root a negative, but you can odd root a negative. Got it, guys? Check your work, see if it works out. For the sake of time, let's move on to the next problem. Last one. How do you feel so far? Please ask questions if you don't understand. And when I said ask questions at the end, you don't have to just ask like beyond the scope. Sometimes you have to ask, I don't understand when you did this. I don't understand problem number 2. I don't understand like that step. So I want to help you too. So it's not all about like deeper understanding, but if you don't understand the simple stuff or the things that I'm showing you, please ask. Alright, last one. Solve for extraneous solution. A little bit harder. So, same idea though. Get rid of what you can first. What's easiest to get rid of here? I could get rid of the 1. Add 1 to both sides. I got a 4. 2x minus 1 to the 2/3 power equals 16. What do I get rid of now? Get rid of the 4. This is times 4. Divide by 4. 2x minus 1 to the 2/3 power equals 4. Now, how do I get rid of the 2/3 power? I can't get rid of this because inside the parentheses unless I get rid of the exponents first. So how do I get rid of the 2/3 power? Remember we talked about inverses? What's the inverse of 2/3? The inverse of that is 3/2, both sides. Take a look. 2/3 and 3/2 make 6/6, which is 1. This is 2x minus 1 to the 1st power, which is just 2x minus 1. This is 4 to the 3/2 power. What does that mean? Remember, every time you see a fraction, the exponent, it means radical. What kind of radical? It's a square root. Very good. Of what? Of 4 cubed. 2x minus 1. What's the square root of 4? It's 2. 2 cubed is 8. Add 1 to both sides. 2x equals 9. Divide by x. X equals 9 over 2. Alright. Is that correct? I don't know, because I need to check my answer. So I need you guys to do this for me. I need you to check your answer, plug it in, and see if this is correct. Alright. Sounds good? Alright, great. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you on Monday. Alright, that's it.